The ancient walls of Windsor Castle held many secrets, but none quite like what James Morrison was about to discover. As a palace guard with 15 years of faithful service, James had walked these corridors thousands of times. He knew every creak of the floorboards, every shadow cast by the towering windows, and every whisper that echoed through the grand halls. On this particular Tuesday morning in March, something felt different. The Queen Consort Camilla had left for her official visit to Scotland, and the royal household was operating with its usual precision during her absence. James was conducting his routine security check of the private royal quarters when he noticed something unusual near Camilla's dressing room. The ornate door, usually secured with multiple locks, stood slightly ajar. James frowned, his trained instincts immediately alert. Royal protocol was sacred, and every door, every room, every personal space was meant to be secured when the royals were away. He approached cautiously, his hand instinctively moving to his radio. As he drew closer, James could see that the lock mechanism appeared to have malfunctioned. The electronic keypad was flashing red, indicating a system error. This was highly unusual, as the palace's security systems were maintained with military precision. He tried his access code, but the door remained stubbornly stuck in its partially open position. James knew he should call for technical support immediately, but something about the situation nagged at him. The gap in the door was just wide enough for him to see into the dressing room, and what he glimpsed made his breath catch. Scattered across the floor were what appeared to be official documents, jewelry boxes, and pieces of elaborate clothing. His mind raced through the possibilities. Had there been a break-in? Was someone still inside? The palace's security was supposedly impenetrable, but James had been in service long enough to know that no system was perfect. He spoke quietly into his radio, requesting backup while keeping his voice steady and professional. While waiting for assistance, James positioned himself strategically near the door, ensuring he could see both the corridor and monitor any movement from within the room. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant sounds of the castle's daily operations. Housekeeping staff moved efficiently through other parts of the building, unaware of the potential security breach unfolding just floors above them. As minutes ticked by, James began to notice more details through the gap. The room appeared to be in complete disarray, which was completely contrary to how royal spaces were typically maintained. Camilla's dressing room was always kept in perfect order, with every gown, every accessory, every personal item arranged with meticulous care by her dedicated staff. The backup team arrived within 10 minutes, led by Chief Security Officer Patricia Wells. Patricia had been with the royal household for over 20 years and had seen her share of unusual situations, but even she looked concerned as James briefed her on what he had discovered. Together, they examined the malfunctioning door mechanism more closely. Patricia's experience told her this wasn't a random technical failure. The keypad showed signs of having been tampered with, though by someone who clearly knew what they were doing. The work was sophisticated, not the crude attempt of an amateur intruder. After careful consideration and following proper protocol, Patricia made the decision to force entry into the room. They needed to assess whether anything had been stolen, whether there was any ongoing threat, and most importantly, whether this represented a breach of royal security that could have wider implications. As the door finally gave way, both guards stepped into Camilla's private dressing room, and what they found would challenge everything they thought they knew about palace security and royal secrets. The scene inside Camilla's dressing room was unlike anything James or Patricia had encountered in their combined 35 years of royal service. The normally pristine space looked as though someone had conducted a frantic, yet methodical search. Designer gowns lay carefully draped over chairs. Jewelry boxes sat open with their contents examined but not stolen, and official documents were spread across the antique writing desk in organized piles. Patricia immediately began photographing the scene with her secured camera, documenting every detail for the official report that would need to reach the highest levels of palace administration. James, meanwhile, conducted a systematic sweep of the room, checking for any signs that the intruder might still be present or had left behind evidence of their identity. What struck both guards as particularly odd was the careful nature of the disturbance. This wasn't the work of a common thief or vandal. Valuable jewelry remained untouched, expensive perfumes sat undisturbed on their crystal trays, and even cash that Camilla kept in a small drawer for charitable donations remained exactly where it should be. Someone had been looking for something specific. As James examined the area around the large mahogany wardrobe, he noticed that several of its compartments had been opened and their contents carefully reviewed. Evening gowns, daywear, and formal ceremonial attire had all been systematically examined. The intruder had even gone through the shoes, methodically checking each box and looking inside boots and formal footwear. Patricia was documenting the desk area when she made the first significant discovery. Among the scattered papers was a handwritten note, clearly not in Camilla's handwriting. The paper was expensive, the kind used for official royal correspondence, but the message was cryptic. The crown jewels have more stories than the public knows. Some treasures were never meant to leave the family. Both guards exchanged meaningful glances. This wasn't random vandalism or even a typical burglary. Someone with knowledge of royal protocols, access to palace stationery, and a specific agenda had orchestrated this break-in. The question was whether they were dealing with someone from within the royal household or an outsider with sophisticated knowledge of palace operations. James continued his methodical examination of the room while Patricia coordinated with the Central Security Office. The palace's extensive camera system was being reviewed, though whoever had done this had clearly chosen their timing carefully, likely during a window when camera coverage was limited or when they knew security rounds would be. Elsewhere, it was while examining the far corner of the dressing room that James made a discovery that would change everything. Behind a curtained alcove that housed some of Camilla's more formal governmental attire, he found clear evidence that someone had forced open a hidden panel in the wall. The panel, which James had never noticed in his many security sweeps, appeared to be original to the castle's construction, but had been modified more recently. The hidden compartment was empty now, but its velvet-lined interior suggested it had once housed something precious. Dust patterns on the fabric indicated that whatever had been stored there was large, possibly a gown or ceremonial robe, and had been removed very recently. The precision of the removal suggested someone who knew exactly what they were looking for and where to find it. Patricia immediately escalated the situation, contacting the Royal Protection Command directly. This was no longer a simple security breach. It was potentially a theft of royal property, possibly items of historical significance. The involvement of hidden compartments suggested that even senior royal staff might not have been aware of what was being stored in Camilla's private quarters. As they waited for additional investigators to arrive, James and Patricia continued documenting everything they could see. The break-in had been planned and executed by someone with intimate knowledge of the palace layout, royal schedules, and security protocols. Most disturbing of all, they had targeted something hidden that even the regular security sweeps had never detected. The afternoon sun streaming through the tall windows cast long shadows across the disrupted room, and both guards couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery was just the beginning of something much larger and more complex than a simple theft. The arrival of Detective Inspector Sarah Chen from the Royal Protection Command transformed the atmosphere in Camilla's dressing room from tense to electric. Chen had investigated numerous high-profile cases involving the royal family, but the circumstances surrounding this break-in immediately caught her attention as something extraordinary. Chen began by interviewing James and Patricia separately, documenting their exact movements, timeline of discovery, and initial observations. Her questions were precise and thorough, focusing particularly on the sophisticated nature of the security bypass and the selective searching pattern they had observed. It became clear that she suspected this was an inside operation. While Chen conducted her interviews, a team of specialized forensics experts arrived to process the scene. These weren't ordinary crime scene investigators. They were palace-trained specialists who understood the unique challenges of investigating within royal properties while maintaining absolute discretion and security protocols. The forensics team made several immediate discoveries that supported Chen's theory about inside involvement. The electronic lock tampering showed signs of advanced knowledge about the palace's security systems, including access to override codes that were changed monthly and known only to senior security personnel. Additionally, the intruder had managed to avoid several motion sensors that would have triggered immediate alerts. James found himself becoming increasingly invested in the investigation. During his interview with Chen, He mentioned something that had been bothering him since discovering the scene. The handwritten note they had found contained references to crown jewels and family treasures, but it was written on paper that he recognized as coming from the private stationery used by senior, royal household members. Chen's interest sharpened when James described the hidden compartment and its obvious recent emptying. She immediately requested access to historical records of the room's construction and any modifications that had been made over the years. What they discovered in the palace archives was startling. The hidden compartment had been installed in 1953, shortly after Queen Elizabeth II's coronation. According to carefully preserved but rarely accessed records, it had been specifically designed to house duplicate ceremonial items and backup pieces of the coronation regalia. The records indicated that several items had been stored there as security measures, including a replica of the coronation gown that had been created for preservation purposes. Patricia, who had been coordinating with various palace departments, returned with information that made everyone pause. According to the household inventory system, no items were officially listed as missing. However, the system only tracked items that were regularly used or displayed. Historical pieces stored for preservation or security purposes operated under a different, much more restricted inventory process. Chen made the decision to expand the investigation beyond the immediate crime scene. She requested a complete audit of all ceremonial and historical items stored throughout the palace, focusing particularly on pieces related to coronations and royal ceremonies. This was an unprecedented request that would require approval from the highest levels of royal administration. As the afternoon progressed, more details emerged that painted a picture of careful planning and intimate knowledge of palace operations. The break-in had occurred during a specific 2-hour window when security rounds were focused on other areas of the castle. The intruder had somehow known about Camilla's travel schedule weeks in advance, suggesting access to confidential royal planning information. The most unsettling discovery came when the forensics team found trace evidence suggesting that the break-in might not have been a one-time event. Microscopic analysis of the hidden compartment showed signs of multiple recent openings, indicating that someone had been accessing it regularly over several months, possibly longer. Chen began to develop a theory that this wasn't theft in the traditional sense, but rather someone removing items that they believed belonged to them or that they felt had been improperly stored. The careful nature of the search and the specific targeting of historical ceremonial items suggested someone with a personal connection to the royal family's history. James, meanwhile, couldn't stop thinking about the notes, reference to treasures, never meant to leave the family. The phrase suggested intimate knowledge of royal family dynamics and possibly access to information about the provenance of specific ceremonial items that wasn't widely known even within the palace staff. As evening approached, Chen made a decision that would dramatically expand the scope of the investigation. She authorized a discreet inquiry into the background and recent activities of anyone with access to both the security codes and knowledge of historical ceremonial storage locations. The discreet background investigation that Detective Inspector Chen had authorized began yielding results within 24 hours, and what they discovered sent shockwaves through the royal household's senior administration. The list of personnel with access to both high-level security codes and historical ceremonial storage information was surprisingly short, containing only 12 individuals. James found himself called back for additional questioning, not as a suspect, but as someone whose detailed knowledge of palace security procedures could help narrow down the list of potential perpetrators. His 15 years of service had given him insights into the subtle changes in behavior and routine that might indicate someone planning unauthorized activities. During the second interview, James revealed something that had seemed insignificant at the time, but now appeared potentially crucial. Over the past 3 months, he had noticed that Margaret Thornfield, one of the senior household coordinators, had been working unusually late hours and had requested access to historical storage areas that weren't typically part of her responsibilities. Margaret Thornfield was a 48-year-old woman who had served the royal household for over 20 years. Her record was impeccable, her loyalty unquestioned, and her knowledge of royal ceremonies and historical protocols was encyclopedic. She had coordinated numerous state events and had been personally trusted by multiple members of the royal family with their most sensitive Ceremonial preparations. Chen immediately authorized a careful investigation into Thornfield's recent activities, personal communications, and financial records. What they discovered painted a picture of someone under significant personal stress, but also someone with unprecedented access to exactly the type of information needed to plan and execute the break-in. The financial investigation revealed that Thornfield had recently inherited a substantial debt from her deceased mother's medical treatment. More significantly, she had been in contact with several auction houses that specialized in royal memorabilia and historical artifacts. The communications suggested she had been making discreet inquiries about the potential value of ceremonial items, particularly those related to coronation ceremonies. Patricia, working closely with the investigative team, uncovered security footage that had initially been overlooked. The cameras had captured Thornfield entering the area near Camillas' quarters during her regular duties, but on closer examination, she had remained in the area longer than her official responsibilities required. Most tellingly, she had been carrying a small case that wasn't visible when she left the area. The breakthrough in the case came when Chen decided to search Thornfield's personal quarters within the palace staff accommodation. Royal household employees who lived on the premises were subject to periodic security inspections, but these were typically routine and focused on general security rather than criminal investigation. Hidden beneath a loose floorboard in Thornfield's modest apartment, investigators found what they had been looking for. Carefully wrapped in acid-free preservation materials was one of the most historically significant items in the royal collection. Queen Elizabeth II's actual coronation gown, the one she had worn during her 1953 coronation ceremony. The discovery was breathtaking in its implications. This wasn't just any royal garment. It was arguably one of the most historically important pieces of clothing in British history. The gown, made by Norman Hartnell, was adorned with embroidered symbols representing the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth realms. Its theft represented not just a crime against the royal family, but against British national heritage. Chen immediately secured the scene and arranged for the gown to be examined by textile preservation experts to ensure it hadn't been damaged during its unauthorized removal from the palace's climate-controlled storage environment. Preliminary examination suggested the gown was in the same condition as when it had been stored, indicating that Thornfield had taken considerable care in handling it. The investigation now focused on understanding Thornfield's motivations and determining whether she had been acting alone or as part of a larger conspiracy. The careful preservation of the gown suggested this wasn't simple theft for financial gain, but something more complex involving personal beliefs about ownership or rightful possession of royal artifacts. James, who had been following the investigation's progress, couldn't help but feel a mixture of satisfaction at the successful resolution and sadness about the circumstances. Thornfield had been a respected colleague, someone he had worked alongside for years. The revelation that she had been systematically planning and executing theft of royal property was shocking to everyone who knew her. The discovery of the coronation gown in Thornfield's possession raised immediate questions about what other items might be missing, and whether this was an isolated incident or part of a pattern of unauthorized removals from royal storage areas. Chen authorized an immediate comprehensive audit of all historical ceremonial items to determine the full scope of potential theft. The arrest of Margaret Thornfield sent ripples of shock throughout the entire royal household. When Detective Inspector Chen and her team arrived at Thornfield's quarters early Thursday morning, they found her calmly drinking tea and reading, as if she had been expecting them. Her reaction to the discovery of the coronation gown was not surprise or denial, but rather a strange mixture of relief and defiant justification. During her initial questioning, Thornfield's motivations began to emerge, and they were far more complex than simple financial desperation. She spoke passionately about her belief that certain royal artifacts were being improperly stored and preserved, hidden away where they couldn't fulfill their intended purpose of connecting the British people with their monarchical heritage. James found himself deeply disturbed by these revelations. As someone who had dedicated his career to protecting royal property and maintaining palace security, the idea that a trusted insider could rationalize theft as preservation was profoundly unsettling. Yet Thornfield's genuine emotion when discussing the Historical significance of the items made it clear she wasn't a common criminal. Motivated by greed, the comprehensive audit that Chen had ordered revealed the true scope of Thornfield's activities over the past 18 months. In addition to the coronation gown, 3 other historically significant items were discovered to be missing from their designated storage locations. These included a ceremonial sword used in the 1953 coronation, a set of pearl earrings that had belonged to Queen Victoria, and an ornate prayer book that had been carried by multiple generations of royal women during their coronation ceremonies. Each missing item had been carefully selected for its historical significance, rather than its monetary value. Thornfield had demonstrated extensive research into the provenance and ceremonial importance of each piece, suggesting she had been planning these removals for months, possibly years. Her knowledge of palace storage systems and security protocols had allowed her to access areas that even many senior staff members weren't aware existed. Patricia, who had worked alongside Thornfield on numerous occasions, struggled to reconcile the colleague she knew with the person who had systematically violated royal trust. During informal conversations with other staff members, she learned that several people had noticed Thornfield becoming increasingly vocal about what she perceived as the hiding away of royal heritage from public appreciation. The Seoul investigation took an unexpected turn when Chen discovered that Thornfield had been in communication with a private museum curator in Scotland who specialized in royal historical artifacts. Their correspondence revealed that Thornfield had been developing a plan to create a private exhibition that would showcase royal ceremonial items in a way that would make them more accessible to the public. This curator, Dr. Elizabeth Hamilton, had unknowingly become part of Thornfield's scheme when she expressed enthusiasm for the idea of a traveling exhibition featuring rarely seen royal ceremonial pieces. Thornfield had used these conversations to justify her belief that the items needed to be removed from palace storage to fulfill their true purpose of public education and historical preservation. Chen's team discovered that Thornfield had been meticulously documenting each item she removed, including detailed photographs, historical research, and preservation notes. Rather than planning to sell the items for personal profit, she appeared to have been creating a comprehensive archive that she intended to use for what she considered a more appropriate public presentation of royal history. The most shocking discovery came when investigators found Thornfield's personal journals, which revealed that her activities had been motivated by a conversation she had overheard between senior royal staff members about potentially lending certain ceremonial items to international museums. Thornfield had interpreted this as evidence that the royal family was planning to permanently remove important British historical artifacts from the country. James was called in to review security footage from the past year, looking for patterns in Thornfield's movements that might reveal when and how she had accessed the various storage areas. What he discovered was a methodical operation spanning many months, with Thornfield using her legitimate access to ceremonial storage areas to gradually remove items, during times when security attention was focused elsewhere. The psychological evaluation that Chen ordered revealed that Thornfield genuinely believed she was acting as a guardian of British royal heritage. Her actions weren't motivated by personal gain, but by a misguided sense of patriotic duty and historical preservation. This made her case particularly complex from both legal and administrative perspectives. As news of the arrests began to circulate within the palace, staff members found themselves questioning security protocols and wondering how such a breach of trust could have occurred. The revelation that someone with Thornfield's level of access and knowledge could systematically remove royal artifacts raised serious questions about internal oversight and the balance between operational efficiency and security monitoring. The formal charging of Margaret Thornfield with theft of royal property marked the beginning of one of the most sensitive legal cases in recent royal history. The Crown Prosecution Service faced the unusual challenge of prosecuting someone whose motives, while misguided, appeared to stem from genuine devotion to royal heritage rather than criminal intent for personal gain. James found himself called as a key witness in the preparation for the trial. His detailed knowledge of security protocols and his role in discovering the break-in made his testimony crucial for establishing the timeline and methods used in the thefts. During preparation sessions with prosecutors, he struggled with mixed feelings about Thornfield's fate. recognizing her dedication to royal service while understanding the serious breach of trust her actions represented. The recovery of the stolen items required careful coordination between law enforcement, palace curators, and conservation specialists. The coronation gown, being the most historically significant piece, underwent extensive examination to ensure that its unauthorized removal and storage hadn't caused any damage. Conservation experts were relieved to find that Thornfield's careful handling had preserved the gown's condition, though its exposure to uncontrolled environmental conditions could have been catastrophic. Detective Inspector Chen's investigation revealed that Thornfield had been planning to approach senior royal officials with her concerns about artifact accessibility before taking matters into her own hands. Her personnel file contained several formal proposals she had submitted over the years suggesting increased public access to royal ceremonial items. When these proposals were not implemented according to her timeline, she had apparently decided to take unauthorized action. The psychological evaluation conducted by court-appointed specialists painted a picture of someone whose dedication to royal service had evolved into an obsessive need to control the preservation and presentation of royal heritage. Thornfield had convinced herself that temporary theft was justified by what she perceived as inadequate public access to historically significant items. Patricia, as the senior security officer involved in the case, found herself reviewing and revising security protocols to prevent similar incidents in the future. The investigation had revealed several vulnerabilities in the palace's internal monitoring systems, particularly regarding long-term storage areas that weren't subject to regular security sweeps. These revelations led to comprehensive changes in how ceremonial items were tracked and accessed. The media attention surrounding the case was carefully managed by royal press officers, who needed to balance public interest with security concerns in legal proceedings. The story of a palace insider stealing the coronation gown captured public imagination, but palace officials worked to ensure that detailed security information didn't become public knowledge. James received commendation from senior palace officials for his role in discovering and investigating the break-in. However, he found the recognition bittersweet, knowing that it came at the cost of a colleague's career and freedom. The incident had shattered the sense of trust and security that had previously characterized the royal household's internal relationships. The trial preparation revealed the full extent of Thornfield's unauthorized research into royal artifacts. Her personal library contained dozens of books on royal ceremonial history, correspondence with historians and museum curators worldwide, and detailed plans for educational programs that would increase public appreciation for royal heritage. Her intentions, while criminally executed, demonstrated genuine scholarly interest and patriotic motivation. Dr. Elizabeth Hamilton, the museum curator who had unknowingly encouraged Thornfield's plans, cooperated fully with the investigation. Her communications with Thornfield revealed the depth of planning that had gone into the proposed public exhibition, including detailed conservation requirements and educational programming that would have accompanied the display of ceremonial items. The palace's internal investigation expanded beyond the immediate thefts to examine whether other staff members had been involved or had knowledge of Thornfield's activities. This process was particularly challenging because it required balancing security concerns with maintaining the trust and morale of the dedicated staff members who kept the royal household functioning. Chen's final report to palace administration included recommendations for enhanced security protocols, improved monitoring of historical artifact storage areas, and better communication channels for staff members who had concerns about heritage preservation. The case had revealed not just security vulnerabilities but also the need for clearer policies regarding staff suggestions and concerns about royal artifact management. As the legal proceedings moved forward, the royal family faced difficult decisions about how to handle sentencing recommendations and whether to pursue the matter to the full extent of the law. Thornfield's 20 years of faithful service, combined with her apparently sincere motivations, created a complex situation that required balancing justice with compassion and understanding the unique circumstances that had led to her criminal actions. The resolution of the Margaret Thornfield case came 18 months after James Morrison first discovered the broken lock on Camilla's dressing room door. The legal proceedings had been carefully managed to protect royal security interests while ensuring justice was served, resulting in a complex outcome that reflected the unusual nature of the crime and the perpetrator's Motivations. Thornfield ultimately received a suspended sentence and was required to perform extensive community service focused on legitimate historical preservation projects. The court recognized her genuine dedication to royal heritage, while acknowledging that her methods were unacceptable and had violated fundamental trust. Her 20 years of faithful service and the careful preservation of the stolen items influenced the judge's decision to avoid immediate imprisonment. James found himself permanently changed by the experience. His role in uncovering the thefts had earned him recognition and promotion within the palace security hierarchy, but it had also given him a deeper understanding of the complex motivations that could drive someone to betray institutional trust. He now served as a senior security consultant, helping to implement the enhanced protocols that had emerged from the investigation. The recovered coronation gown was returned to its proper storage location, but not before undergoing the most comprehensive conservation assessment in its history. The examination revealed fascinating details about the construction techniques used in 1953 and provided valuable information for future preservation efforts. Palace curators noted that Thornfield's unauthorized research had actually uncovered several historical details that had been previously unknown. Detective Inspector Chen's investigation had broader implications beyond the immediate case. Her comprehensive review of palace security led to significant changes in how royal households worldwide approached the protection of ceremonial artifacts. The case became a study example in law enforcement circles for handling crimes involving cultural heritage and institutional trust. Patricia received appointment as the new Chief of Historical Artifact Security, a position created specifically in response to the security vulnerabilities revealed by the case. Her role involved overseeing the protection of ceremonial items, while also developing protocols for appropriate public access to royal heritage. The position reflected the palace administration's recognition that legitimate concerns about heritage accessibility needed formal channels for expression and resolution. The case prompted the royal family to establish a new advisory committee on royal heritage accessibility, which included historians, museum professionals, and public education specialists. This committee was tasked with developing appropriate ways to increase public appreciation for royal ceremonial artifacts without compromising security or conservation requirements. Thornfield's misguided efforts had inadvertently highlighted valid concerns about public access to cultural heritage. Dr. Elizabeth Hamilton, the museum curator who had been unknowingly involved in Thornfield's plans, was eventually invited to serve on the new Heritage Accessibility Committee. Her expertise in public historical education and her understanding of Thornfield's motivations provided valuable perspective for developing legitimate programs that could achieve some of the educational goals that had driven the unauthorized removals. The hidden compartment in Camillas' dressing room was permanently sealed and its contents relocated to more secure storage areas. However, the discovery led to a comprehensive survey of similar hidden storage locations throughout the palace, revealing several other historical storage areas that had been forgotten over decades of administrative changes. This survey resulted in the rediscovery of numerous artifacts that had been presumed lost. James often reflected on the strange turns that his discovery had precipitated. What had begun as a routine security check had evolved into a complex investigation that revealed both serious security vulnerabilities and genuine concerns about heritage preservation. The case had demonstrated that even the most trusted employees could make devastating errors in judgment when they felt institutional concerns weren't being adequately addressed. The broader royal household had learned important lessons about communication, trust, and the balance between security and accessibility. Staff members were now encouraged to voice concerns about heritage preservation through established channels, and regular forums were created for discussing historical artifact management and public accessibility issues. Years later, the coronation gown would eventually be displayed in a carefully planned public exhibition that incorporated many of the educational elements that Thornfield had envisioned. The exhibition honored both the historical significance of the artifacts and the legitimate public interest in royal heritage, achieving through proper channels what Thornfield had attempted to accomplish through unauthorized means. The case remained classified in many of its details, but it became an important example within security and heritage preservation communities of how personal dedication could become problematic when not properly channeled through institutional frameworks. For James, it served as a constant reminder that protecting royal heritage required understanding not just external threats, but also the complex motivations of those entrusted with preservation responsibilities.